Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about what it's going to take if you're thinking of applying in the next cycle in 2025. So before I get into it, I'll just let you know for any of you who are still waiting on interviews for the current cycle 24-25, please understand it's nowhere near over. Most of the schools, although a lot of schools have already sent out interview invitations, and a lot of students have already interviewed and been accepted. Right now, I think we have 145 students who've already been accepted since June 1st. The majority of schools are not going to do interviews until September, October, even November, and then some even into December. So if you're feeling like it's late in the cycle or you haven't heard anything yet, don't worry, it's nowhere near over. And so don't worry about all these other people who have been interviewed and have been accepted. As I was saying, a lot of the schools are not even going to send out interview invitations for about 2 to 3 weeks. That's usually after the September 1st deadline has passed. Then a lot of these schools are going to go ahead and then they will send out the interview invitations. And just try to say, be patient. Even though we're going to start talking about the next cycle today. Don't worry, this cycle is far, far from over. Matter of fact, I had a student last month in July. We did her interview prep for a school that she had applied to during the last cycle. So for some of the schools, they interview very, very late in the cycle and sometimes even into the next cycle. Anyway, so again, just don't worry if you haven't been notified of an interview yet. The cycle is far from over. That being said, even though this cycle is far from being over, as I said, it's not too early to start thinking about next year if you're going to be applying in the 2025 cycle. And for those of you who are about ready to start school up again here in the fall, or maybe some of you have already started it, I wanted to talk to you about some of the classes that you should make sure that you have, that you are taking the right ones or the correct ones. There are, most schools are going to require anatomy, physiology, microbiology. These are what we call the core sciences that basically every school is going to require. When it comes to microbiology, there are some subtle differences, meaning some PA programs will accept microbiology without a lab and the others require a lab. When it comes to, for instance, microbiology, just know that even if your school that you're looking at does not require a lab, that almost all the other students are going to have labs because of the other schools that they might be applying to more than likely do require a lab. So let me go back and talk about anatomy, physiology, microbiology. And we have talked about this before, but for those of you who may not have listened to our podcast before or not seen this, this might be new to you. So anatomy and physiology, it must be human anatomy, human physiology. Some schools these days, they offer a combined anatomy and physiology course, and that's perfectly fine. So anatomy and physiology 1, anatomy and physiology 2. Again, just make sure that these have labs and you've taken 2 full semesters. So essentially it's 8 semester credits. Anatomy and physiology 1, anatomy and physiology 2, or a semester of human physiology with a lab and a semester of human physiology with a lab. Combined A&P are usually sort of like the safest ones to take. If you're taking separate anatomy, separate physiology, make sure these are it should be like under biology. So some students take these under kinesiology. And right now, every school has their own policy as far as what they will accept, what they won't. So be very careful when you're taking some of these courses because they may not be equivalent to any particular PA program. And unfortunately, with more than 380 PA programs, and some of these are very subtle differences that, again, one school may say, yes, we'll accept it, while another will say, no, we won't. So be very careful if you're taking an anatomy and physiology course that's not within the biological sciences. Generally, if it's an anatomy course that has a lab, physiology course that has a lab, probably satisfies the requirement. But there's nothing wrong with checking with the schools. One of the things we recommend if you're getting ready to apply or you're thinking about applying to a program is to start attending information sessions. And if you're attending an information session, one of the best things you can do is ask them about a course that you're taking. And I'm only talking about if there's a question. Certainly if you're taking human anatomy, human physiology, has a lab, shouldn't be an issue, and there's no reason to ask them if that meets their requirements. But if there's any concern that the course you're taking, like I said, falls under kinesiology or it's under a different department, don't take anything that says human anatomy or physiology for allied health or healthcare professionals, or certainly not for nursing. So these will not satisfy the requirement probably for any school. Same when it comes to microbiology. The one ideally you would want to take is general microbiology with a lab. And all of these classes, by the way, are usually 4-credit courses. So anatomy with a lab, physiology with a lab, microbiology with a lab. 4 credit, 4 credit, 4 credit. So if it's less than that, you need to check and see if this is the correct one that you're taking. When it comes to microbiology, we see a lot of microbiology for allied health, microbiology for nursing, medical microbiology. And really the safest one is just general microbiology. If your school does not offer this, you may have to go to a local community college to take this. That's perfectly fine. It does not matter if it wasn't taken at the university where you obtained your degree. This does not matter. What's really important is that you take the proper course. There are a lot of these that say introduction or introductory anatomy, introductory physiology, introductory microbiology. Introductory courses generally are not going to count. And I keep throwing out this phrase generally because, as I said before, there are a lot of schools that have different rules, policies, whatever, when it comes to these courses, which is why we recommend that you talk to them at these information sessions to find out if what you have taken will satisfy their requirements. But if you're taking an introductory course, and I know personally, I've seen some schools actually just reviewed some coursework for a student of ours recently, and the microbiology course was called introductory, but it was also a 300 level course, and 300 level for microbiology particularly is considered the right one. And unfortunately at her school, that's just what it is called, as introductory. But you don't want to take an introduction to anatomy, introduction to physiology. And I'm talking a lot about these particular courses because, as I said earlier, these are considered the core science courses for any PA program. And while some schools require organic chemistry or biochemistry and obviously general biology and chemistry, general chemistry, these courses are important, but nothing is going to determine what you'll be as a student more than the anatomy, physio, micro. These are the courses that you're going to use throughout PA school. Organic chemistry, not going to really use this in PA school or even as a PA. So it's not, it's important. And again, if it's required, then you would need to satisfy that requirement. But in terms of taking the right course, anatomy, physio, micro, you really want to make sure that you're taking the proper one. I know a lot of times students will tell me they've gone to their healthcare career advisor at the university, and I just simply say if that person did not attend a PA program, if they're not a PA themselves, they're not a graduate of a PA program, then it's kind of hard to tell whether they really do know what's right. So again, you just have to be very careful about the courses. On the other hand, you can always just check with the PA programs that you're thinking of applying to, and they would happily answer whether the courses you're looking at, if they satisfy the requirements of that particular PA program. Okay, so anatomy, physio, micro, we've talked about that. Some of the very basic courses that almost all schools are going to require are general biology, general chemistry. And most of the time they want 1 year, so 2 semesters of general biology. So Gen Bio 1, Gen Bio 2, again, both of these with a lab. Gen Chem 1 and Gen Chem 2, both with labs. Again, this will vary from school to school. Some may only want, or require, I should say, some will only require 1 general biology. and some may only require one general chemistry course. Just always remember that these courses, even though a school may not require 2 full semesters, may not require labs, such as I talked about the microbiology, most students are going to have this because most students are applying to multiple programs, and in order to meet that prereq, they'll have, the max required. So 2 biologies, 2 chemistries. They should be general biology and general chemistry. When it comes to labs, if you took your labs online during anywhere basically from January of 2020 through December of 2021, most schools will accept that. I say most. There are a few that are kind of sticky about not accepting online labs, even though it was during the height of COVID. But going forward after basically January of 22 up until now and then going forward, you really, really should do your best to avoid online labs. Try to understand, I'm sure for most of you this is very obvious, that prior to COVID, there really were no online labs. I don't even know if there was such a thing as an online lab. Certainly there are online courses, but maybe like an English course or a math course, but not a science that had a lab. So this is very new. And because it's so new, schools are changing their policies. It's fairly routine that maybe this cycle they're accepting something that which next cycle they don't. I know of a school in Southern California for years, they had specifically said genetics they would not take online, even though that did not require a lab. And just before the new cycle opened last year, they changed that requirement. So again, this is sometimes sort of a fluid thing, meaning, again, just right now what may be their policy, it could change next cycle. So if any of your sciences have online labs, you want to make sure that you're talking to the PA programs to see whether this will be accepted. But always know, no matter, even if they do say it is acceptable to take an online lab, in-person is preferred. And again, now you're going to be competing against other students, those that had taken it in person and you might have taken it online. For those who will tell me like, well, but I didn't have any choice because of my work or my life situation or this. Sorry, but before COVID, and not to be that kind of person, but when I took my microbiology, I was active duty military. And I started my days at 6:30 in the morning, didn't get off until 5. And then I had to go do my microbiology course at a local community college at night, which usually didn't even finish until 10 o'clock. And it did this 4 days a week. So, I'm not a martyr and I'm not trying to hey, look at what I did, but it is possible. I hear this from students. I don't have the time, doesn't fit my schedule. The schools are not going to use that into consideration. They're not going to factor that in and say, well, we only prefer or only accept online, but in your case, we'll overlook it. So please be aware of this. Online labs are usually a bad thing. That being said, there are many PA programs that will accept them. And this is not to say that you could not get an interview or get accepted, but just be aware. Preferred would be an in-person format for the lab. As far as these hybrid courses, online class, in-person lab, again, you want to check with the schools first before doing anything like that. Don't just assume that this will be okay. And again, to sit there and say that you didn't have any other option, that's not true, because there are in-person classes with in-person labs. Unfortunately, it may not have fit into your schedule, whether work or extracurriculars or otherwise. But this is basically what I'm trying to point out, things that end up a lot of times being mistakes that students make, and then they have to reapply, and that's a real problem. Well, it's going to take you longer, obviously, but it's going to cost more. And often you may not even know why the schools rejected you, and it can be simple little things such as that. So ideally, for the sciences that have labs, in-person class and lecture, if it's a hybrid, online lecture, but in-person lab, make sure you talk to the schools. And not just looking at their website to see if they do allow this or not. Make sure you talk directly with the school to find out if in fact they do allow the hybrid. If it's going to be all online, And there are, by the way, there are many very good schools that provide online lecture and online labs. And I've known many students have taken these labs and said, they are difficult. They're the real thing. It's not just something, I don't know, made up just for just to get you through. They're really rigorous labs as well as if you were in person. So there are schools that are offering online labs that are, I guess the best word I could use is reputable. But regardless, you will still have to get that approved. And when I say approved, I don't mean like a form, sign, notarized document. Just simply talk to the schools. And you should be talking to the schools anyway. Going to the information sessions, getting to know them, letting them get to know you. But asking questions about online labs, that's a great thing to find out whether. Note that if you do ask, that a lot of them are just going to simply say, we prefer in person. They're always going to say we prefer, but you want to find out if they would accept. Enough about the sciences with the labs, but for those of you, like I said, who are getting ready to start school up here fairly soon, some of you might have already done it, and I realize it's kind of late. You probably picked out your coursework about 2 months ago, but if you're taking any of these courses and they don't match, and some of the things that we have talked about, you might want to get with members of your school and find out if there's any way you can get into a different course that would meet the requirements if the one you're taking is not based upon what we've discussed today. Your other coursework, obviously, if you've looked into PA schools, this is going to vary greatly too in terms of, again, whether you need 2 semesters of general biology, 2 semesters of Gen Chem, but also whether you'll need general psychology, whether you're going to need statistics, genetics, English composition, math class like pre-calculus, calculus, or higher. Most of schools these days, they're going to require general psychology. They will require math class like pre-calculus or calculus, might be college algebra. Many are going to require English composition classes these days. And by English comp, essentially any writing class. When it comes to things like medical terminology, I don't know, maybe about half the schools require, half don't. Would tell you this is a course that's going to make you more competitive, whether your school requires it or not. And this, in fact, there are a couple of really good online medical terminology courses that taking that online would be perfectly fine. And you'd be better off taking that online versus at your university. A couple of the ones that we know of that are online are actually cheaper than even like your local community college. And the credits that they award are accepted by all PA programs. But again, taking it online, usually these only take about a month versus sitting in a whole semester in class at your university or community college. Even if the school does not require medical terminology, make you more competitive. Going back to the organic chemistry, biochemistry, obviously they'll make you more competitive. There are somewhat difficult courses, so if your school does not require them, obviously it'll make you more competitive, but you want to still focus on the basic prereqs that you absolutely must have. Basically, when it comes to the courses, if you're not sure about what you're taking, if the schools are going to accept it, certainly we would be happy to help you. If you want to come work with us, let our mentors help you go through your academics. You can certainly talk to the PA schools that you're thinking of applying to and asking them if the coursework you have is actually meets or satisfies the requirements of that particular PA program. Letters of recommendation. Okay, so this is something I see year after year after year. Most people are starting to think about who's going to write their letters of recommendation, but invariably it just seems to be this part of the application that gets postponed until about the time they're going to submit, and then they're asking that person for the letter of recommendation. You should really identify these people sooner than later. And when I say sooner, you could even identify these people now. Put it out there. Could they write you a letter of recommendation? And if you're close enough to that person, there's nothing wrong with having them write it now. You can't put it into CASPA, just so you know. If you were to enter it into CASPA, but you're applying next cycle, when the current cycle closes, certain things will be purged. So letters of recommendation will be purged personal statements will be purged, the life experience COVID statement. The rest of your entries will still be kept into CASPA, but the essays are essentially purged or deleted. So if you're going to have somebody write a letter of recommendation, I'm not saying that you need to have it done right now, but as time goes by, assuming that you're going to try and get your application out soon when the cycle opens, you want to start addressing it now. Know that for some letters of recommendation, what we find a lot of times the providers will want to see your personal statement. So you might want to do your personal statement, and then when that's ready, do the ask for the letters of recommendation. I'm not going to say everybody's going to ask for it. I just don't know. One individual to the next, but we know it's fairly common for people to ask to see your personal statement before they write your letter of recommendation. So it would look best for you if you had that ready. Anyway, when you're asking for the letter of recommendation, again, timing is key. The biggest problem we see when the interview cycle opens up and people are trying to get their applications out, they've finished CASPA, they've got all the grades, have everything entered, they can't get the people to write letters of recommendation. Either you've waited too long to ask them and you haven't given them enough time to write this, or they're busy. Remember, CASPA opens at the end of April each year. Now, when in April, every day changes, but it's always generally last week. And if you're trying to get this out in May, I always think, May, at the end of May is Memorial Day weekend. So most people probably about halfway through May are already on vacation. They're thinking about it. They're making trip preparations and what they're going to do. So letters of recommendation may not be forefront in their mind. So we always recommend ask for this early. As I said, they can't upload it, but they could either email you the document and you hold on to it, and when the time comes, you send it back and say, I'm going to send in the request for the letter of recommendation. This is what you wrote. Could you upload it? Most of the time, they're not going to let you view it. So just if they would write it and hold on to it, that way when you come to them, say, now is the time, that they can just simply upload it real quick. So it's not that they have to wait for you to send the request through CASPA. Somebody could always write it now or soon, as I'm actually saying. Again, maybe not right now here in August of 2024, but end of the year, early part of next year, you really want to start at least identifying these people, said at the very least, if not getting them to write it, so that way when it's time for you to submit, you have these ready. Otherwise, just as I said, each year I usually get a few people who they're ready to submit, but they're struggling on getting the letter of recommendation from the person that they had to request it from. They can't reach them. That person's moved on somewhere. They've forgotten they said they would do it. Whatever. Just my advice is start thinking now who you're going to ask, and then maybe later this year, certainly very early next year, you want to go ahead and ask them. Make sure that they get this written up so that it's ready to go when the new cycle opens. Volunteering and shadowing. So let me just talk about volunteering first because it's easier. But volunteering, if you're not doing volunteering, simple, you need to get out there and do it. I understand people, again, I'm busy with my work. I'm busy with my schoolwork. I just don't have time. And whenever a candidate says to me, I don't have time, right away, that just says you're a bad PA student candidate. Though that phrase should never be said. You should never say you don't have enough time, because being a PA student is being a full-time student with a full-time job. And it is going to be the most demanding thing you have ever done in your life. This is what those schools are looking for. How much could you balance while you were in your undergraduate career? How much will you be able to handle as a PA student? So you don't have to do 3 times a week or even twice a week. I'm looking for, I would say, it's like a couple times a month. It's not so much the number of hours as consistency. So if you're not volunteering, you really need to get out there and start looking for volunteer opportunities. Again, this is not something you want to just start up 2 months before your application cycle or before the application cycle. You want to get on top of this now so that you can show a record of volunteering. PA shadowing. Again, we know this is hard, and it got worse because of COVID. We used to actually help students do this ourselves. But even for us, it's extremely difficult to find PAs that will. It's not just that whether or not they want you to shadow, it's usually the policy of the place that they work. I used to work in a private practice, and we made up our own policy. So we didn't have to answer to anybody. There was no building man, or, there's no corporation. It wasn't, with this healthcare group or this healthcare group that made up policies. Literally just bring you in any day and anytime I wanted. And back, I don't want to make this sound like such a long time ago, but back in the day, certainly before COVID, I mean, I could just walk somebody into the operating room. I mean, just usually had you sign a form. I had the patient sign a form saying that it was okay for you to observe. And that's it. Nowadays, to observe in the hospital, you have to get your PPD test. A lot of them have HIPAA training that you have to go through. Some of them have background checks that have to be done, drug screening. I mean, it's arduous to get into a hospital just so you could have an opportunity to shadow. And a lot of people work for groups nowadays. When I say people, I mean the doctors and the PAs. They work for a group. So they no longer have they don't have the last say, or they don't have any say as to what the policy is for allowing somebody to shadow. So oftentimes it's somewhat arduous. Okay. That all being said, you're still going to need shadowing. So whether it's, a PA that you see as a patient yourself, or a PA that maybe your parents or other family member, or it's a friend of a friend, or just somebody or maybe your doctor knows, if you have a doctor, your doctor knows somebody that has a PA and they can put in a word for you. But at the very least, there is virtual shadowing. And then as far as in-person shadowing, it's just sometimes being a little creative, whether that's reaching out to PAs on LinkedIn. It is going to your state's PA society. Some of the local PA programs, if there are any local ones, might know. And in some cities, I live in Austin, Texas now. We actually have a PA society. I used to live in San Diego, and San Diego also had a PA society. And often, non-PAs, like pre-PA students, can join this. Obviously, this is a great environment. You just have to do some research, whether it's contacting the state PA society or any of the local schools to find out if there's a PA group, PA society in your city or area. These are some of the important things to start thinking about now. If you're going to be applying in 2024, 2025, if you're going to be applying in the 25-26 cycle, again, it may seem early for you. And if you want to know what we can do to help, all you have to do is go to our website, click on the free consultation, and sign up for a meeting with one of our PA mentors. And although we don't give any advice, the free consult is not to talk about, what you should be doing or where you stand as a candidate. It's more just to explain our services if you have questions about it. We do provide what's called a general advising session, where we will go over everything that you've been doing to date and then what you should be doing going forward to be a more competitive applicant. We do have, if you've been to our website, you might know about, it's called an ultimate service, which is where we help you with every aspect. That's, figuring out your academics, what needs to be done, if anything, looking at which schools are better fit, helping you with your patient care hours if we feel you need something more competitive. It's essentially helping you put the whole application together, working with you on your personal statement, and then when the time comes, your mock interview preparation. As I said, since June 1st, I personally have over 145 students who have been accepted. I believe 80% of these, or a little more than 80%, are first-time applicants. I hope this is somewhat informative. There's a lot more, of course, but that's what we ask you to sign up, and we can really go through to figure out where you are and what you need to do going forward. But I always like to emphasize it's never too soon to get started. A lot of students, they'll come like in February or January and sign up, that's fine. We will do everything we can to help you. But right now is the time you should be thinking about if you're going to work with us, or if you're just, putting things together. Find out if you're taking the right classes, your hours, if these are competitive. which schools are going to be the right fit for you. Personal statement is something that right now it might be, probably is a little too early. If you're applying to next cycle, that's probably the one thing I would say you don't need to worry or stress about right now. You could, put that off until later this year, even early next year. But your coursework, figuring out the schools that you're looking at, do you meet their requirements? Have you got everything lined up? If not, what's the plan to get into those classes? Because you have fall semester here starting very soon, spring semester in January. A lot of time to get some of these prereqs that you may not have or may have the wrong one. Get that lined up so that when the new cycle opens in April of 2025, you're ready to go and you're able to submit immediately. One of my students who got in this cycle, I have actually been working with her since she was a sophomore in college. So again, it's never too early. So if you're still in college, maybe you're a junior, senior, you could even be a freshman. There's never too early a time to get started on all these things. It was really kind of exciting for her, at least for us it was, because we'd been working with her for so many years. We'd gone through quite a bit, but her first interview, she got accepted, and she'll definitely be a PA student next year. Now, whether she actually goes to that school, as I said earlier, it's still very early. She's going to have other interviews later in the year. We'll find out where she's actually going to end up going. But if you have questions about our service, again, I mentioned earlier, go ahead and sign up for the free consult. Otherwise, again, I hope this was helpful for any of you who are planning on applying in the next cycle. And again, please, if you have applied for this cycle, it is not over. We have had a number of students interviewed and accepted, but it's nothing compared to what's going to come in the next few months. We know most of the interviews are going to happen October, November. So if you're waiting like a lot, just hang in there. It's coming. Thank you.